if Mr. Books decides whether he's going to order them or not. They're two helpful books. The best books are not in print on grace. And I have those on reserve in the library. Clark Pinnock. Clark. Pinnock. No, but Randy will probably have, if he decides to order them, he'll have them in it. And I've got about 30 books, and I'll put all the lexical tools. We're meeting in the only air-conditioned room in the library, in the library. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's pray. Come on in, Jim. We're glad to have visitor back. She brought her fiance this time. Go on and introduce him.
This is Phil Babcock, and again, I'm still
Sister?
Chris and sister. Sorry, Tina.
You're confused about which sister you are?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Let's pray. We want to pray. Mark turned in his papers, but Mark is on the school board at Emden, Hartsburg, and if no one's killed tonight in the community meeting over the principal, it'll be a supernatural intervention. It's total breakdown there. And there's many small communities, you see. They're red hot. Just take 2 generations or the oblivion. Emden is very small. It's not there but on Mondays. Hartsburg, very small, but the people are just evil. It's not merely they're past upset. And I agree when he's on the school board, and he's going to try to keep from just absolute havoc breaking out. It's already broken out, but I mean at the public meeting. So we want to pray for him, but he does have his papers. And our CIA agent from Madison, Wisconsin, has the flu. So apparently, unless we're Christian Scientists, he's not here. He doesn't even think he's here. But he's sent all his papers in. So I want you to pray for anyone that's sick. Pray especially for the situation in Hartsburg.
Did I hear right that the school's able to raise enough money?
Classical tools in the history of the physical sciences I have in those 800 or 900 pages that you didn't look at, but others have Xerox copies of that. I brought 1 or 2 books. We used to use books. We used to read primary sources, but we just lapsed back into coloring books. We get crayons and Ray.
Last week I was out in New Hampshire, and I did. So we are moving back next month on faith. We're still $700 a month short on
So am I.
ends meet. Right. So.
Is there any human optimism about it?
No, it's spiritual optimism. So we're ready. Tonight's my last.
New work, and so let's bow our heads. And when the time comes, you greet our visitors. And Ray, we're glad we're going to have you pray, because we might not hear you pray, till I come out there and see what's going on. And but pray for one another. Pray especially for the brothers and sisters and our church members who are violent opposition in the communities. It's ridiculous for people who hate education want to be on school boards. It's kind of like a student. They're going to teach, but they hate school. They can't wait till they get out of school. I encourage them. I said, please don't inflict yourself on anybody if you hate school, because the students will be just like you. And I talked to 2 students. They just couldn't wait till they get out of school because they want to be teachers. I said, well, couldn't get to you in 4 years. Probably another 4 years wouldn't help any. So let's bow our heads, pray for one another, for the summer, and for the things of the kingdom, and the things you know best. And then, Ray, you word to prayer about things that we don't have any control over. Just hope that there can be some intervention that's constructive rather than destructive. And I'll show you a few books, and then we'll talk a while, and that'll be it. a useful book. I do not check and see if it's still in print, but a very fine, inexpensive, one-volume history of science. It's dated by 20 years, of course, but Mason's History of Science. You want some tools, and I have in the notes that most of you haven't seen, I have all the classical literature up to the 1970s and 80s, and I will rectify that as soon as I get another project done. And yes, Jim?
Before we start, would you like me to?
Oh, yes, I would. This is very important. This will be the number you could call the Girl Scouts of America, and they will send you, I take it free. They did a survey about moral attitudes in young people, and it's available. It'd even be worth paying for. But if you think college, the Gallup poll, the moral analysis of Gallup is a crisis, you should read the Girl Scouts. See, the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts are an anachronism, see, in our culture. See? And they did this, they're fighting for their lives. See? Most people would think that an Eagle Scout has hormone imbalance and, walks light in her loafers. And so this is very important. It'd even be worth paying for, but it's free. This is tremendous. So, Jimmer? Call that. That's the Girl Scouts of America. And I'm even going to try to get some for a class. But you ought to get them. See, they're very important because it's a notch below any college-age students. You think we're in crisis, you would cry. If you're a crier, you'll cry over those statistics. And thank you, Jim. He was the one that brought it to my mind in the first place, and I got a copy. And now 3 people are trying to steal it from me on this campus. And so I'll write that down. Write that down on a $20 bill, Jill. Jill can give that to me. Put this down for me so I'll carry it to those dudes so I can get my copy back. But if you're in camp, see, it's Western thought. It doesn't make any difference. It's not an American matter. It's a moral. It's a cultural matter. So this is a tool, and most tools. Have you got anything to write on, Jim? You going to write it or not write it? These are all written on. Hello there. Oh, praise God. Woodman, you put this down. Put that number down for me. Have you got enough ink in your pen?
It's already down.
Huh. All right. I got you. But please do it immediately. And be very valuable for dealing with the moral attitudes of 5th and 6th grade kids. You're not talking about some belligerent, asinine, graduating senior from Harvard. See, they're talking about the kids on the street, the little kids.
Doesn't say pacify sociality. That's what I should, first he kind of dismissed it because it was Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
And they read the first part, and I think Coles and somebody else, the names he very well knows. And this respectability.
Because who did it? Okay? But again, it's a cultural matter. Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts are fighting for traditional, not lying and things like that. Well, these aren't big issues in our world. So those institutions are fighting for their lives. See, I remember the time, I'm not that old, when a kid that wasn't going to jail would be in a Boy Scouts. Unless they were going to maximum security prison. And wouldn't let him in the Boy Scout. They'd already done time in jail. And the same with the girl. But it's a cultural matter. It's not another club to belong to. It's over the values that the club emphasizes. It's like the Ys. They're trying to recover the Christian element in the YW and the YM. Why? Because there's a crisis in the culture. The first point of the 10 points in federal and state educational norms for the 1990s is the recovery of the teaching of morals. It's too late. See, they don't believe the church teaches it. In the 40s and 50s, the school system stopped teaching what they considered morals. While in the 50s and 60s, Piaget and Kohlberg's value clarification penetrated education. This is sheer relativism. Why would you need to teach relativism? If relativism's the case, I'd think it'd be self-evident. But even relativism has to be taught. So it's not natural to be relativistic. So here we are at a critical time. And a few messages, in chapel, or a few messages in church won't fix that up. Humpty Dumpty's had an enormous fall. Enormous fall. And if you're around in homes where parents, families, preachers' children, why the children are destined for maximum security prison. See, their behavior is like they're fed sugar, 2 spoons of sugar. They're like I have observed microscopic particles that do not move any more erratically than some preacher's children. No. Well, they're already broken down. Normative behavior is out of the question. I know I have 2 in mind. Time they're 7, they will set their parents on fire. And these are preachers' kids. So all the community has to do is see that kid and say, hey, the church is a lot of hooey. That's all that has to be. Just show me that behavior, and I won't pay a bit of attention to you. That's clear. Now, 2 or 3 things. We didn't get to Freud. Now, psychoanalysis, you may not have that paper, but that paper is untouched, been on reserve, no fingerprints except mine on that paper. And by the mid-19th century, when psychoanalysis penetrated the psychological and psychoanalytic perimeters in medicine, Freud maintained that positivism in physics was the normative science. But psychoanalysis psychologizes thought and logic. This is how you get to relativism, psychologizing logic and epistemology. And there's a little tool there. Now, a very important book, another important book, I might have brought that sometime, about the theologian and his world. I'm going to show these 2 men that I'm sending to Paris back here. Here's 2 of 8 or 9 books. You may not keep them. The Boutreau Circle. Yes. And the Boutreau Circle here, Duhem, and the Boutreau Circle, in fact, Emile Boutreau tried to critique positivism by taking the psychoanalytic line. So that's a desperate move to critique positivism in physics by psychoanalyzing psychological or scientific theory. Okay? Now, this is a book I'll use in creation class next year, but Yeke, Science and Creation. This is a history of the theories of the universe. This is not a biblical study, but it's a very important study, see, about the universe. Yes. Yes. Good.
Still get it. My copy came in, so there are still.
Is that? Well, okay. It was in books in print. And Peacock, God's at Work. See, these are proofs for God. Peacock has 1979 Bampton Lectures, which is a lecture defending certain things like the Gifford Lectures. And Peacock's book on creation of the world has been put back in print for $12.95 by the University of Notre Dame. The Bampton Lectures, when Oxford published it, it was $48. So you know God intervenes when you need books. That he published them, he puts them back in print for $12.95 in paperback. See, from over at Notre Dame, which is just a mailbox. Notre Dame is not a community. The creation of the world. I'm using that in creation class, but this book was in print and Peacock. Now, I don't mean that they're thoroughly biblical. You're not going to preach that material necessarily to Cagnici's, but they're defense. Huh?
Some book in your Carol's Day, what was it? Cosmos, that's creation.
Yes, that's Jackie's. Oh, there's another book. I just got it. Yeah. But Yeke has one on cosmos and creation. But it's the concept of creation, and I didn't put any notes up because I had equations and things to put up in the advancements in the 70s and 80s in microscopic physics. And when you get 10 to the negative 32nd and 10 to the negative 42nd, where they're accounting for the origin of the dimensions of the universe, in a Big Bang universe. So I didn't put that up because you're not going to use it this summer in the camps or anything. But I would encourage you to get science. I would encourage you to get the issues of creation in the camps where you can talk to them about the matters. I would encourage you to get them in senior high so they would believe that the church is dealing with the universe and not little games. When's the next trip we're going to take so we have fun? And what I do when a kid talks like that, I pound them up to their knees in the cement floor and just leave them there, and then go out and laugh. And that'll get to them. I've gotten to a number of students like that. I have three subjects that I want to speak a word about, but I want to leave before I re-engage the subject of our getting together. I want to give you some quick notes about leadership, because it's so desperate, and every class should be about, come on in, Leonard. Every class should be about leadership, and leadership about science, and leadership, whatever you're studying, what are you going to do with it except turn in assignments? See, that's dumb. That's not an education. See, an education is being able to write and research and to think critically, and you can evaluate whatever you hear, wherever you hear it, whatever book you read it in. That's the difference between a training and education. Let me give you these quickly. I'd encourage you to get a very useful book. There's not much in it, wide margin and, like this. But McKendry, the president of the conservative Methodist school down in the north or the southeast corner of Kentucky, and he has a new book on the power to follow and the grace to lead. That's very simple. You could read that in 2 hours. It's a very simple book. There's a lot of insight in the book, though. Most books that you can read in 2 hours have, it's just entertainment. You're not expecting to learn anything. You just filled up 2 hours of boredom or something. Now, here's what I ask you to think about all year, all school, every class, what you and I are doing. What about leadership for the 1990s? What kind of preparation? Not just what are you interested in, what am I interested in. A Christian should be interested in every perimeter of reality. Every perimeter. Here's what, these are just things for you to think about, not immediately necessarily causally connected with our class. But to commit ourselves to a mission that matters. A mission that matters. Everybody that stays alive has some kind of mission. But the only people in the world that it matters to is them. Another is to think big. To think about how big the universe is. Think big in the name of God. Most churches want to think locally. They want to think very limitedly. Now, leadership will have to have high ethics, but this comes at a critical time. That ethical relativism and a rejection of the Judeo-Christian ethical tradition, it's deep in the culture. Whenever the Girl Scouts are paid and trying to deliver free of charge, which would be an $8 or $9 book. Isn't that right, Jemmer? $8 or $9, maybe $10. You're talking about ethics, and a few sermons on it will not recover it. Now, another is a change master. Change. See, change is inevitable, and the history of science is where change cuts. And when I return to technology, technology reaches people's lives. High tech does not go around taking polls and asking people in little rural communities if they're interested in change. See, change is affected and it'll run over people or whatever. So how do we keep the gospel? How do we critique the world without leadership that understands both the biblical mandate and the world in which the mandate is carried out? A change master. Now we need to create the future. I don't mean I believe the future's God's. See, that's proleptical. That's why eschatology, biblical eschatology, is the ground of biblical ethics. And that is, who controls the future is the source of who controls the morality. But a leader in the 1990s must be sensitive to inspire loyalty. Now, in the preface, in McKendry's book on Power to Follow and Grace to Lead, he uses the example of two teachers. And both of them were effective teachers, but both of them were getting ready to retire. And the one man had never created any interest in any student to go on and do doctoral work in his discipline. Well, needless to say, that man wasn't chosen. See, you just can't be around. We can hang separately or hang together, but you can't just be around and no one becomes interested in that perimeter. Not for 10 or 20 or 30 years. So, be sensitive, inspire loyalty to a cause. We are causeless at this hour. I don't mean students, their cause is to finish school and to finish the papers, but that's a trivial cause. I'm talking about a big sustaining. Now, a leader in the 1990s is a risk taker, which means we can't control all of the factors in the wheeling and dealing. Ray has to go out, and the Lord wants a church there, and he needs I haven't any idea where. I know where he could get $700, but not $700 every month. I don't know where that is. But if he just whined like some people, Ray and I know, well, he just say, well, I can't do that. All the things we couldn't do. Now, don't confuse risk with idiocy. Those are not the same things. Risk means we've studied ourselves to our limits, and that's all we can do. But if we only move to the limits of our capacity, most people won't be moving very far. Now, another factor in a leader in the 1990s, this summer, wherever you go, a leader is a decision maker, releasing new potential in people. Releasing new potential. Well, have you ever dealt with inflexible people that reached their potential 30 or 40 years ago? You talk about new potential, said, well, we haven't got any of that here. All right. Now, here's another thing. Leaders of the this is period, but the 90s I'm talking about, uses power wisely, because we can't get anything done without power. Here's an example for Paul Mark. I just spoke with him as I dismissed him from this class. From missing class. No, that was a very important meeting. And this is part of the controversy. Was a teacher was supposed to carry out something that the community said wasn't carried out, but the teacher never had any authority to carry it out. See, that's like many preachers. You're authorized to be great and to make a big church here so we'll be famous, but we don't give you any authority or any clout to do anything about it. Well, when you give me a job, if you don't give me authority, you give that job to somebody else. Because we can't spend all of our time guessing and see if we're going to get to do it. Decision making, releasing potential, using power wisely. Now, it's over transformational and transactional leadership. Most leaders in and out of the church are transactional. That just means they're boss. They have power and clout. And I'm going to read it again. Read what again? I'm going to read the Ayatollah Ayakoka's biography. In fact, in high level leadership management classes, Ayakoka is being set forth as the only hardball player in major industry that is a transformational leader. Now, that may or may not be the case. I'm not preaching that is the case, but he cares about people. That's why he'll win. So, uses power. Now, a leader must master influence. Having influence is not the point. We must use influence constructively. Another must communicate effectively. Now, we all know leaders that can't talk. They couldn't even talk to themselves in a mirror. See? This is forging productive relationships. But that won't be if we are not operating beyond the decision-making, negotiating table mindset. See, decisions are negotiated. Every major decision in industry is negotiated. It has nothing to do with truth and morality. It has to do with negotiation of needs and wants. And a leader is a team builder, maximizing people's potential. A leader that does not maximize every person that's being led's potential is not a leader, whatever that person may sociologically be. A leader in the 90s must be courageous, strengthening resolve. Because if a leader's not sure, how will the people be? See, leadership is not wetting your finger and put it up and say, which way is the wind blowing? Wherever. That's not leadership. Leadership doesn't ask people to raise their hand. Leadership studies and has some awareness beyond the people that are being led. Or someone else should be the leader. Then a last thing that I want you to think about is committed. Commitment is the glue to success. And I don't mean American models of success. But I mean accomplishing something. There is a legitimate parameter of success, but success, American pragmatism can be success. The mafia is successful. They were almost successful buying Stinger air missiles. But so being successful is not all that it's up to be. So have a mission that makes a difference. Where do you begin? Well, you begin with leadership. It's like Jesus. He looked around and he saw the people that seemed so far removed from a highly complex, high-tech world, mega-trend world. He looked around and saw the sheep as they were without a shepherd. Because sheep are the dumbest animals besides a cocker spaniel and a dove in the world. In fact, they just go where they'd jump over a cliff. See, if the leader jumped over a cliff, that's what they would do. So a shepherd. Now, if there was ever a generation in my memory that's shepherdless, it's them. Oh, I don't mean nobody cares. You know, here's one cares, and there's one that cares, and two cares there. But there are very few shepherds of the sheep. That requires, in our age, information undreamed of in any other age. And one of the areas I've just revivalistically encouraged you to think about is science. We cannot have the brightest of this generation, the coming generation, unless you tap into the church with challenging them in the name of Jesus Christ that he is also Lord over physics and biology and sociology and computers and math. He can't just be Lord over Sunday school. He wouldn't be Lord over very much. He can't just be Lord over senior high camp. He wouldn't be Lord over very much. It can't be. So do what you can. I never ask that anybody do any more than they can. I have a rule of thumb. I never do any more than I can. But some need to do more than they've done, whether they can or not. Before I turn to Einstein, I've had a conversation with him today. I want a few final words about technology for several reasons. I was going to bring 4 books on technology. I didn't bring as self-evident in a world where there's no self-evident propositions. Self-evident propositions were refuted in 19th century logical and mathematical theory, but some people still have self-evident assumptions. But those are assumptions. Those are not provable. Technology shapes the world, whether we want to be shaped with it or not. Now, where the most recent advance in microscopic physics will bypass most preachers and students in colleges and seminaries and Christian schools and etc. But technology will not. That'll touch people's lives, so I wanted to end with kind of a revivalistic invitation to him to get a new set of white sidewall, Michelin white sidewall. We'll sing, and I'll preach a while on this, and then we'll take up a collection. I said last time, blind faith in technological progress has produced the ecological crisis. Smog, water pollution, excessive noise, shoddy products, lethal food additives, radioactive waste, genetic manipulation, dehumanization of man, among other maladies just as serious. So the Christian position is not to attack technology, but to bring it under judgment and accountability. Technology is on trial in the most advanced culture in the world's history. What, if anything, as I asked last time, does the gospel imply for the technological crisis? Well, at the heart of the technological crisis for the people in the churches, whoever that would be, the average person, is that there isn't anything that science and technology can't solve given enough money and research. There isn't anything that it can't solve. While the data is totally opposed to that, and each thing solved, 100 things that they've never dreamed of pops out on the other end. It's like pathology class and pathology books. They're outdated by the time they're printed because diseases that never existed. When the man just got a PhD in pathology 3 years ago, and he's already 100 years behind what's going on in pathology. But that just means there's a lot of stuff to catch hold of. See, it's not a fault to anybody, just as long as we bring that limitation to bear, so it doesn't become God. That's where the word comes. It's not an attack on intelligence. God knows there's been enough of that. Now, positive developments from TV, computers. I just want to say TV. Without media, it is impossible to think rationally about evangelization of the world. It is not possible in a world of 5.5 billion, double in size, 10 billion by 2000. It is not possible. See, I didn't say we weren't going to do it. I said it is not possible to talk to each individual one at a time. So there's something wrong with just American talk about personal evangelism or one-on-one. See, we want to do what we can. But if you think that's the method to evangelize the world, one of us has another thing coming. We have to have high tech in place in this decade. Is there any chance of it? As much human chance as us getting $5 million by the end of May. I didn't say we wouldn't. I said it would approach zero probability. But if it occurred, that probability doesn't determine what's real. It only determines what you don't know. Without technology, it is out of the question addressing the world. Now, the Mormons have in place communication technology for every nation in the world. But our heritage does not. So TV, it's not good or bad or what's on it, or whether you spend money on cable, and I go out and tap into the neighbor's cable. I tell neighbors if they don't get better stuff, I'm quitting borrowing it. I don't want any more of this junk. You got all the junk I want. Now think about computers. See, it's just been 5 or 6 years ago that you couldn't use a computer to do a thesis. Wouldn't be permitted. Satellites, we need thousands of satellites to communicate the gospel. So we have technology, so we got negative parameters and positive parameters, but we need a theology of technology. If someone facetiously said, well, you think you got a theology of everything, if there's a God, there's a theology of everything. Of course, the person who said that had to be brain dead. Not said there's a theology of everything. Say, well, that's not my major. Well, then you're not majoring in God. That's that simple. Technologies are not created by nature. Nature did not, has not, does not create technologies. Man does. And man creates technologies with a worldview. They're created by human beings. And that's the point of contact with the Christian gospel. What is the nature of the person creating technologies? What is the nature of the persons controlling and directing? See, we have two broad problems in our world of science and technology, and that is the rate and direction of change. Rate and direction. It's massive. Massive. While many people in the churches are still in the 30s and 40s and 50s with their minds and their hearts and their vision. No possibility that God doesn't have to bypass people like that. Technology liberates, and that's where we were last time. Does technology begin in the 19th century? Marx's view that man would use technology to create lifestyle to break the back of labor so he could have nothing to do but leisure. But you see, most people can't manage freedom. That's like you can't wait to get out of school. And if you don't have something significant to do in about a week, you'll be climbing the trees and not coming down. Children just can't wait till they get out of school. See, and they drive everybody crazy. They're around within 3 days. Now notice, 19th century, Industrial Revolution 19th century assumption about technology. that it wasn't about God, but man created technology to set himself free for a lifestyle. Is that true? Why, it's created more anxiety. It's created more negative parameters. Now, it's not all bad, see? So it's not inventing the wheel and fire. Let's go back to the black buggies and one horse. And maybe you'll go so modern you'll have an orange reflector on the back of your black buggy, so I don't hit you coming down Route 136 down there in Marcola. But see, leisure? Well, see, most people, it's like this. Technology was to set people free from poverty, from hunger, ignorance, has it? No? Well, but see, it's like showers. You know, some people, you know, are advanced by it, and some hate water on their bodies. Don't notice? See, but in 19th century science and technology, freedom used to be grounded in grace and God. But see, in the 19th century, it came to be grounded in education and science and technology. Knowledge will set you free. Technology will set you free. Is that true? See, we're not just meeting on the last night of the show, see, before the, you know, oh yes. See, every fundamental thesis of Marx has been refuted long before the collapse of Eastern Europe. So it's odd, but 75% of the world is still Marxist. Because they hate wealth. I still tell people, that may be, but you've never seen a poor man build a factory or give you a job. When you see poor people giving people jobs, you come and tell me about that. So it's absurd to think we're all alike. That's why I developed a series of sermons on God did not create man equal. We are not created equal. That's what French naturalism shows up in our Constitution said. But that isn't what the Bible says. All the data is against the fact that we're created equal. If we're equal, it may be because we're all sinners, but it isn't because we all have the same IQ and social propensity and capacity. But our world, we're not all the same as sinners because our world doesn't set general to that category. So, anyway, technology. Technology liberates this or gives us choices. While one of the sources of deep anxiety is what? But too many choices. I don't know how to decide. Which started out, you can have any color card you want as long as it's black. Well, now there's so many colors. It's just like the jackass that starved to death, couldn't decide which bale of hay to eat. Now see these things set man free, so we will have plenty of time to enjoy life, and more people that you and I know in and out of the church enjoy it less. Because that's not the source of joy. That's not the source. See, we want a gospel critique. It's about preaching and teaching and a Christian worldview. It's not about dumbness. It's about precise understanding of where real freedom and lifestyle come from. Now, just think of all the things that are involved in that. A couple of other things. What is the relationship between these three things? Nature and culture, because technology is a cultural expression, and technology. I'll just put this in the chart. What's the relationship? That's a whole category of theology, of philosophy, of technology. See, it isn't nature. Now, in the 19th century, this is the wedge between what? The natural and the artificial. And civilization, the critique on civilization of Freud, Kierkegaard, the 1960s, you remember? They were opposed to the establishment. Well, you see, they wanted to go back to nature. Everybody wants to go back to nature. So that's naturalism. See, culture is a human product. But what is the worldview of the human producing that? The imago Dei is directly to bear on the whole philosophy of technology. So civilization is artificial. The assumption is that nature is not artificial. So you get an attack on the Judeo-Christian ethics, on salvation and the Judeo-Christian sense of salvation. You get a whole structure attack on Christianity, see, from technology and and not just psychology and anthropology and sociology and their perimeters. Culture determines both how we use and modify nature. Is that true or false? Every culture in the world stays alive by, this is sermonic oversimplification, but every culture in the world stays alive by what? That's not false, John. Well, by relating to nature. There isn't any culture that stays alive in the world or comes into existence without dealing with nature. Water, food, babies, whatever. Now, culture determines both how we use and modify. Those are values. Now, we've lost Christian values. Were you here when I told you about a Girl Scout survey? It's way past discussing about abortion. See, we've lost a worldview. And you don't just tack on discussion. You have to confront the discussion at the very root of the divergence. How to use and modify nature. Now, where does man think nature's going, and who owns nature? Biblically. But the mandate to subdue, to hold it under the lordship of God. But in Western civilization, where science and technology has its most powerful thrust, most people, we call it
Mother Earth nature.
well, you know, she sells oleo. We call it what? Well, we don't call it anything then. I thought maybe you called it something. One more chance. Nature, culture. Nature is not a human product. Creation. Well, all that once evolution takes in. But now technology, now here's the crux of the matter. Technology shapes our societal values. But when technology came into existence, it was still the Judeo-Christian value system that guided the employment of technology. So if technology is to set man free from 18 hours back-breaking labor so you'd have a little fun, see, it's hard to have fun if you worked 18 hours and you're in complete catatonic state. It's hard to spend the other 6 hours in sheer uncontrollable excitement about many things. So there's a direct bearing on labor, but see, the Bible from beginning to end says work, but our culture is opposed to the work ethic. Our Asian brothers see work while they believe in work. Americans see how much work they can get out of. Oh, I don't mean all Americans, of course. You see, work is exciting. If you think not, just be out of work a while and see if the sheer enthusiasm abates any about that. But I know people who could lay right down by work and not bat an eye. Now, Henry Ford said this brilliant, so I repeat it again. Once said that the purchasers of famous Model T could have any color they wanted so long as it was black. And now we can mix lacquer paint. We can put 100 coats of lacquer paint on a $180,000, $90,000 car. 100 coats of lacquer paint. See, it'll never be dirty. See, because it'll reflect past the dirt that would be on it. Or you could have a see-through coat of paint put on by a computer-controlled, not use much paint type of thing. You could almost rub paint off of most automobiles because you're saving money on paint. It's called planned obsolescence. It's because the product ought to deteriorate while you're driving it out of the parking lot. Now, theoretically, technology gives man, now see if this is true and what it has to do with man and God and the gospel. Technology gives man the unique power to determine his own fate. Is that true or false? All right, now we've got industrial technology Can industry control its own life? Well, we're in an international megatrend industrialization, and little jacklegs come and go. They're gobbled up by the big ones. Very few people have any control over the technological world. Very few people play hardball. See? They've got a glove and they stare out at the field, but they don't know what hardball is. Power to determine his own destiny. Now, the fundamental assumption, 19th and 20th century, is that science and technology and education will give man power to control his destiny. Has it? Well, these are things to think about. That's all I mean by that. And in technology, now notice, technology produces labor-saving devices. Many women, their arms won't work because they have so many labor-saving devices in the kitchen. They have to have a 40 by 40 kitchen because of all the labor-saving devices. So we relate systems of labor saving and leisure and quality of life. Is it true, less we work, the more exciting life is? I just ask, is that true? Check it out with the people you know best about it. We have a philosophy of technology, and Jacques Ellul is correct. This is the first time in the history of man. This is not the first time man has used technology. The Temple of Baalbek, Palestine, has a 600-ton stone, hand-cut stone. The only known source of that is in Upper Egypt.